Funding now on Indiegogo, it's Shadowbinders, our second chance offer to get 2 hardcovers of our classic webcomic delivered to your door. Steampunk, fantasy, and romantic comedy from Clownfish Comics. Go to Indiegogo, check out the link in the description below. Now on with the video. Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here without Geeky Sparkles. She's sitting this one out. She's busy doing some other stuff. So we're going to talk about James Gunn and cancel culture. And no, we're not going to talk about how James Gunn was canceled for a joke a couple of years ago and somehow found his way back into Disney's employ. Rather, we're going to talk about how James Gunn is supposedly tweeting support for cancel culture. He's cool with it. After he got canceled and got brought back, I guess he doesn't want to get canceled again. We're going to talk about that in sort of this cancel culture war that's going on, because if you listen to some people say that cancel culture is imaginary. It doesn't actually exist. It's all in your head. Nothing to see here, even though we're firing celebrities every damn day for something they said or did, sometimes 5, 10, 15 years in the past. It doesn't exist. According to one side, the other side says that cancel culture is absolutely a real thing, and it's one side of the aisle on a power trip. So we're going to talk about that before I get into it any further. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We're over 182,000 subs. Thank you so much for the support. So we're going to talk about the James Gunn situation here in a minute or so, but I just want to talk about cancel culture in general. It seems like more and more people in Hollywood are starting to come forward and say, yeah, this is real. Yeah, this is a problem. I don't want anything to do with it. I think it's gone too far. We've heard Bill Burr's thoughts on cancel culture. There have been other celebrities who have done an about face on cancel culture, including Sarah Silverman. I think we talked about this a little bit the other day, but she came out and said she doesn't want to be a Democrat anymore because of cancel culture. She considers herself politically homeless. That doesn't make her an alt-right Yahtzee, which would be a very strange thing for a Jewish lady to be, mind you, but it doesn't matter. There are people on Twitter who seem to think that Jewish folks can be Yahtzees and black folks can be anti-black, and all of these weird leaps in logic that I've seen lately. But, she's no fan of Republicans. She makes that very well known that she's not a lover of Republicans, but she doesn't like where Democrats are taking things either. And it does seem like, at least in this round, it is mostly the left that has instituted this cancel culture war. Now, I remember being a kid in the 80s, and we're going to talk a little bit about that too. Being a kid in the 80s, it was the religious right that often canceled things like Dungeons and Dragons and rock and roll music. And well, maybe that's going way back, but still. Historically, it had been kind of the religious right. And then in the 90s, it did switch a little bit, that there was more moral panic coming from the left. I remember Tipper Gore and her war against video games and all this other stuff, and the parental advisory stickers and all this craziness that went on. And in fact, the media is trying to drag Gen X, which I'm actually at the tail end of Gen X. I'm not going to give away my actual age, but I'm either the very end of Gen X or the very beginning of the millennials. I guess they call us Zennials. I think I fit into the Zennial category, where I spent most of my childhood in the 80s and my teens in the 90s. So I grew up in the 80s and 90s. But Fox News put out this article the other day saying that cancel culture has gone too far. But the HuffPost, remember the HuffPost? That website that was bought by BuzzFeed and got gutted? Yeah, they said that Gen X told them where to stick it. Not exactly. Gen X has been sort of leading the charge against cancel culture. A lot of the people who are calling out cancel culture, who aren't right-wingers, are Gen X, because we're like, what the hell is going on here? So they're definitely cherry picking some tweets. They're definitely cherry picking some tweets here, but I mean, I will give them that. Originally in the 80s, it was the religious right that canceled things, and now it's the religious zealots on the left. So let's go back to James Gunn. If you go back 3 years, I guess it was 3 years, he was fired by Disney. He was canceled by Disney. He was fired off of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And it was over some, ill-conceived jokes about, diddling kids. Not something you want to be talking about when you're working for Disney. Again, a lot of those tweets were very old, but it did sort of send a warning shot out to other directors, I think. I think it was Rian Johnson that purged his tweet history because a precedent was set that you could be fired for things you tweeted 10 or 12 years ago. I know Kevin Hart got in some hot water for some things he tweeted 10 or 12 years prior. And that's, I think, what Sarah Silverman's talking about is it's never good enough. You can't change. You can't grow as a person. They're going to cancel you for every damn thing you've ever said and done. Mostly, I got to remind people, most of the people behind the cancellations are like 13, 14-year-old stans. They're not adults. They're not consumers. They're just really good at making it look like there are a lot more of them than there actually are. They know how to game and how to play Twitter to get their hashtags trending. And when they want to get somebody canceled for whatever reason, mostly I think just to get off on it, then they dogpile on the person. They've been trying to get Chris Pratt canceled for quite some time. Chris Pratt actually came to the defense of James Gunn, And there are some people in Hollywood that were very, very angry that Disney canceled James Gunn. Dave Bautista, who plays Drax, one of them, very, very salty that James Gunn got canceled, and he got brought back. They laid low for a while, and they brought him back. So you would think that James Gunn, who was on the receiving end of a cancellation, would be a little more sympathetic to other people who are on the receiving end of cancellation. And that is not the case. In fact, he's seemingly endorsing cancel culture. This is coming from Bounding in the Comics. Dude's got a short memory, right? Can it be true? Did James Gunn tweet out for the right of cancel culture? Yes, not only that, but he says everyone has a right to cancel him as well. Again, there is one side of the aisle that believes cancel culture is mythical and that the people who get canceled just simply deserve it. They deserve it because they're shitty people, according to Twitter, and they deserve to get canceled, including Chris Pratt, who really hasn't done anything wrong per se, except go to a church that Elliot Page does not like. In a recent series of tweets, Gunn has argued that cancel culture incidents are nuanced. No, they're not. They are not. However, the nuance in this instance is different than what Gunn presents. It all depends on the zeitgeist of the day. That is true. The environment of Hollywood and the socio-political climate, there's a clear conflict between the two. Bounding in the Comics says Gunn is assuming that the nuance is about the right to cancel people, but the issue isn't about the right to cancel people, but the right to cancel certain people, which again leads that nuance to depend entirely on whether or not one aligns with certain ideologies. It's going to be a long read. Buckle up. Obviously, we're not going to read the whole thing, but people were trying to push for Pedro Pascal to take over Star-Lord because they don't like Chris Pratt, right? Imagine if we replaced Chris Pratt for Pedro Pascal as Star-Lord. Oh my God, that would be great. So here's what James Gunn had to say. Stop calling everything cancel culture because you're too dim to have a nuanced opinion, wrote Gunn. People can be offended by something or think something sucks, and that's not cancel culture. It's free speech. He continued to all those writing me about the times people get unfairly attacked. Yes, that sucks, but that doesn't mean every time someone is offended by something, it's cancel culture. Calling everything that is a knee-jerk response that destroys your point. I would agree to some degree. I think sometimes, people are legitimately shitty and probably should get fired, or lose something because of their shittiness. But there are a lot of instances where particular celebrities, and look, it's mostly on one side of the aisle versus the other, particular celebrities are honed in on, zeroed in on, targeted for cancellation. Some might agree with his statement, but it's an important thing to note that there's a difference between being offended and calling for something, including its history, contributions, and everything that compromises, to be completely wiped off the map. And that's kind of what happened with Gina Carano. I mean, immediately, Lucasfilm got rid of her, canceled her action figure deals, and basically has wiped Cara Dune from existence. Compare this to Johnny Depp, who has been, I believe, wrongfully accused of being a wife beater, quote unquote, and he still gets action figures. He still, Disney still makes money off of him. You know, he hasn't been canceled as hard as Gina Carano, which is crazy. James Gunn goes on to say, I don't think there are many people here on the left or right who think that Harvey Weinstein shouldn't have been canceled for what he did. Harvey Weinstein broke the law. Likewise, these are all nuanced conversations. I think most Latin people love Speedy Gonzalez, which is a pretty good argument that he shouldn't be canceled. But Pepe Le Pew, to me at least, is offensive because of the way he treats that cat. Sometimes that cat wants him back, and that's a problem. And a book publisher deciding not to publish some books because some of the images in them are hurtful to minorities, it's not cancel culture, it's their free speech at work. Well, it is until Twitter puts pressure on them to make a decision they otherwise would not have made. That's what we're talking about. Because what happens is, you know, a lot of these companies, you know, they wouldn't have canceled a person or canceled a book or canceled or whatever until Twitter put pressure on them to do so. That's not exactly free speech. That's being held to someone else's moral code by gunpoint. Likewise, I sometimes see celebrities getting attacked on here for something minor or non-existent, and I think it's unfair. Other times I see celebrities getting attacked for shit that's nearly unforgivable, or at least makes me not want to watch their movies. It's nuanced. And for those of you out there, I see you saying, what about people who tried to cancel you? Do they have the right to do that? Of course they do, and I will fight for their right to do so. I mean, I agree with their opinions, but I believe deeply in their right to free speech. It's not really free speech, though, if it's by coercion. You know, and that's the thing. It's basically one-sided cancellation. Now, again, James Gunn was canceled. There were a lot of right-wingers who were happy that James Gunn was canceled, but he got uncanceled. And if it were, you know, my opinion you were looking for on this, he wants to stay on the uncanceled list, so he's going to say what he has to say. He's going to say what he has to say to make sure that he's on the right side of history this time and that nobody cancels him again. So I'm going to wrap this one up. Very interesting to hear James Gunn, of all people, say cancel culture is cool. It's like, dude, you are a lot less punk now. You really are. I'm going to wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.